right? But if you can take that step back, become a facilitator, stoke the fire from minute to minute, impart knowledge, and then let them pass through your orbit a better player, but more importantly, a better human being, then that's your job, right? And so for me, success is that people play soccer for the rest of their life.
Okay, welcome listeners. Thanks for joining us on Play On, Why Street Soccer. My name's John Henderson. I'm co-host with Neil Levin, our nation's leading advocate for street soccer. And we have another excellent guest today. His name's John O'Sullivan. He's the founder of the Changing the Game Project, an organization dedicated to helping coaches, parents, schools, and youth sports organizations give the sports back to our kids. Currently resides in Bend, Oregon with his wife and 2 children. John, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and talk about one of my favorite topics, which is letting the kids play.
Yeah, outstanding. We're really excited, John. You and I met a number of years ago for the first time when you came to Evanston, just north of Chicago, and gave a talk. One of the soccer clubs had invited you out. And so it was early on in the Change the Game project history. And it was really exciting. And it was fascinating for me because I had not formed Mettle Sports just yet, but fascinating for me to see that there was someone talking the talk already on how we need to give the sports back to the kids. And boy, that was what, 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. And I'm thinking, what has happened to youth sports in just the short years since you started this? And I want to dive into that, but we need to go back. I'm going to be your psychoanalyst here for a minute. We're going way back, John. Let's talk about how it all began. I want to hear the evolution of John O'Sullivan, and we're certainly going to get to your newest book, The Champion Teammate. But let's see how we got here. Tell us about your journey. Tell us about your journey.
Well, I'm 51 years old. I grew up in New York. And so if you grew up in New York and you're my age, you were someone who just played every sport, whatever was in season, with your friends in your town. And so I played soccer and basketball, and I was a wrestler, and I played baseball for many years, and learned how to play golf and all that sort of stuff as well. And but I found sort of soccer was my calling, the one I gravitated to most, and decided to pursue that. And I was able to be a Division I NCAA player at Fordham University in New York City. Played a little while in what was the USISL after college in Wilmington, North Carolina. Then got into coaching and fell in love with coaching. And that's kind of been my passion ever since. And so coached college, I've coached youth. I coached my own kids when they were 4. And to this day, I still have a U17 boys team that I coach. And I also run a program for, 8, 9-year-olds as well. I've got about 40 boys and girls in that program as well. So I do more than dip my toe in the water of coaching. Still around the game, still a big fan. Just actually got back from taking that boys team to Spain in the spring, which was amazing. And but about 10 years ago, started this Change the Game project thing where I was just decided that, I was an executive director of a youth sports nonprofit, and I was like, where's the parent education piece? Like, how can I help my parents be better parents for their kids? And I couldn't really find it. And so I decided to create it myself. And that's how Changing the Game Project was born, and wrote a book and just released my 3rd book now, and podcast and everything in between.
So, of course, I'm struck with the early comment about how you grew up in New York and you played everything that was thrown at you. I mean, you played as a kid. Was there some point in time when, through this evolution into coaching, or playing first, of course, Division I, very high level, and then coaching, when you realized, well, this isn't the way that I did it? Did you find yourself in a system that was very contrary to how you yourself grew up and developed into a player?
Yeah. And I mean, I think that system brought brings some good things. I mean, I think the level of coaching is much higher than it was when I was a kid, even though I grew up in a place, an era where there was a lot of good coaches around. But the general level of coaching is much better. But just the issue is, right, we've pushed this, let's air quotes, serious sports to younger and younger ages, right? And well, if I want to make the travel team at 12, then I better be doing this at 8, 9, and 10. And then it's like, well, if we're doing this for the kids at 8, 9, and 10, let's just start travel at 8. And now what do we have to do at 7, 6, and 5? And it's just this downward trickle of adult values and adult priorities into kids' sports and what's happened. I mean, why would a 5-year-old ever need a $200 uniform? Right? They just need a t-shirt, right? And then soccer, I mean, they just need a flat-ish place to play and a round-ish thing, and they can get a game going. But we've made it cost $1,000 or $2,000 or more. I mean, it's nuts. And so, yeah. So when parents with great intentions start investing that much time and that much money into their kids' sport, it takes away from their family, it takes away from other things. But, naturally they're going to start to care more. And then when a kid a couple of years later has said, yeah, I don't really want to do this, then mom and dad are like, whoa, wait a sec. We just invested a lot of time and money in this. You can't quit at 11. And they're like, yeah, but what's all I've been doing for 6 years? Like, I actually want to do something else. I'm a kid. So yeah, this is the change that I think we've all noticed and witnessed. We see it in sideline behavior. We see it in the way officials are treated and coaches are treated. And it's not a healthy thing.
But I'm going to continue to probe this. At what age did you decide then, as you said, that soccer was the sport that you would migrate to and then become elite enough of a player to go to a Division I school?
It's my least favorite word, elite. So I'll strike that from the record. Again, for me, it was high school. And it was going to I went to a big Catholic high school on Long Island with lots of kids and lots of incredible athletes. And, every year there was a couple dozen players going Division I across their different sports. And I remember going to soccer tryouts and there was like 90 kids for 7 spots and I made it. And then I was like, I don't know if I can do that in baseball as well. And so I decided that maybe soccer would be my thing. And it did. I ran track for a little while and stuff. But soccer just became my thing because of just time, and academics was important. And I had a job and all these other things as well. But yeah, it was high school for me. It certainly wasn't middle school. And it certainly wasn't elementary school, where many kids are forced to now choose.
Yeah, I'm struck by the comparisons between you and Joanna Lohman, an early guest of ours on Play On, Why StreetSoccer. And Joanna was very similarly exposed to a lot of sports, especially because she had older brothers. They'd play a lot of football, but her dad would, basically organize neighborhood play in their front yard, and they were playing everything. And she didn't commit to playing soccer until she was a junior in high school. And here she becomes a national team player, and her jersey's retired for the Washington Spirit, and all these great things that happen. Why do we as a society, our society especially, because it really is endemic to the United States, why do we not recognize that is how the best athletes become the best athletes? The multi-sport, the later stage commitment, without all the pressures of the parents, without all the pressures of the coaches, why do we have such a difficult time grasping this?
Well, I think every child is an individual and every child is on their own path. And some kids are going to gravitate, fall in love, be all in. It's all they want to do. But they're very unique, right? Those are the unicorns. Most want to do other things, right? And they want to be with their friends, and they want to do some other stuff, and they want to try stuff out. And it's scary when a kid plays soccer at 6 and does pretty good, and then they're told, oh, hey, do this extra program, and before you know it, the parents are sort of sucked into, oh, well, it's soccer, versus just, no, you know what, we're going to try this, because how do we know if you're going to be good and like basketball? And so you try basketball or baseball or lacrosse or so many other things you can do. Soccer is a really unique sport, and it's why I like your street soccer project, in that soccer, like most invasion games, is really about game intelligence, and it's about understanding space. So it's not just about technique, right? This is the biggest mistake. I tell them, oh, it's all technique. It's not technique. Like 98% of the time in the game, you don't have the ball. So soccer is not about technique. Soccer is about understanding space. And if you understand space and you understand where the ball is and where opponents are and where teammates are, right? Then when the ball gets to you, yes, you need that good technique to make the right first touch into the right place, but so many things come around it. And so things like street soccer, things like futsal, pickup play, whenever, get athletes lots of reps, and they need lots of reps in order to get good. So soccer is not like volleyball or American football, where if you have certain physical characteristics, you can start really, really late and be pretty good. You do need an early start in soccer, but becoming a great athlete, which then hopefully prevents you from getting injured very often, which means that therefore you can handle the practice load as you get better, is incredibly important. And so the biggest mistake that I see in soccer is people say, oh, my kid just loves soccer, but then they don't develop as an athlete. And you can develop as an athlete by playing multiple sports, by doing a lot of things, jumping on a trampoline in your backyard, doing strength and conditioning programs. But when I see kids not developing as athletes and just developing as soccer players, that's, they're usually going to start getting injured during the critical years where they're ramping up training and load, and their body can't handle it because they're not a good enough athlete.
But when you look around the world and you see some of the best soccer players, football is properly called in most countries, when you see them rise to their very high levels, we won't call it elite, they probably...
You can call that elite. I mean, Man City is elite, right? The U12 team in, Evanston is not elite. No offense to Evanston or anywhere else.
No, exactly. And we don't get caught up in that in other countries, right? So it's not about who's elite and who isn't necessarily. It's about playing. It's about playing and developing as a player. And you say that soccer is a sport where you need lots of touches. We call it the sport of 1,000 touches, of course. But you get those 1,000 touches because a coach is blowing a whistle at you, telling you when to touch, because the coach is putting a penny on you, because the coach is bringing out the cones, all when you're 3, 4, 5 years old. And then you get the parental pressure, and you've got you have a need to succeed. You have a need to prove that you have value in your community. That's not the way we see these players become elite in other countries. We see them playing on their own. The metaphor is, how many games did Messi's parents watch him play until he was 14 years old? The answer is probably 0.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but certainly if what you're doing is just going outside and playing all the time. I think Johan Cruyff said it. He said, I went to Ajax 2 days a week for practice. I played in the street every day after school. Where do you think I learned to play? Right. And so I think this is it. And especially in urban areas, especially in areas where, socioeconomically, there's not lots of money to pay for coaches, or any money to pay for coaches, or travel, or things like that. Remember the author David Epstein? Him and I were chatting once, and the time he was living in Brooklyn. I love this quote. He said, John, and he had just come out with this book, Range, about, being specialists and in a non-specialized world. And he said, John, because I live in Brooklyn, and across the street from my apartment, there's a park, and there's a, you 8 travel soccer team that practices there all the time. He goes, and this team travels all over the place to Connecticut, to Maryland, to whatever, to play games. And he goes, I just find it really hard to believe that a team of 8-year-olds can't get a game in a city of 10 million people. Right. And this is the thing, right, that we've placed the value on playing farther away. Right. And how many times in across many sports, I talked to like hockey people, like, yeah, we just went all the way, flew 1,000 miles, and we played a team from our state in this event. That's 15 minutes from us. So yeah, we've started to value all these things that cost lots of money versus just, yeah, they're out there, they're playing, they're accumulating hours, they're making decisions, they're failing. And that culture in an Argentina or in a Spain, kids learn the technique. I mean, when FC Barcelona's scouting 10-year-olds, they're not looking for technique. Everyone has technique. They're looking for insight, right? And insight comes from playing, from solving problems on the field over and over and over.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the best coaching sessions I ever saw was Todd Bean coaching a bunch of 14-year-olds in Barcelona. And he talked for less than 5 minutes in an hour-long coaching session.
Yeah.
And he did exactly what you just said. He looked for inspiration. He looked for ideas. He looked for, what if we try? Or considered? Or how do you think we solve this problem? And he gave ownership of the development to the players. Mm-hmm. And before your very eyes, like somebody, flipped a switch, you see them learning.
Yeah.
In real time. You didn't need wins and losses to assess their performance. You didn't need how many days a week. You didn't need any of those metrics that we so often apply in our youth sports in the United States to determine that this was an amazing thing happening before your eyes.
Yeah.
Powerful kids, solving problems, playing phenomenal games, all from talking, from the coach talking for 5 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is it, right? Is if the coach is talking the whole time, how do we actually even know if the players have the answers? How will you know if they've learned anything if you're solving every problem for them? So the game is actually their time to, for us to see, hey, what have they learned? But when our family spends $2,000 to travel to this place to go get the game, well, then I don't want to see my kid. I don't want to see the fact that he has not learned. I want to see answers, right? I want to get value. I want to get bang for my buck. And this is our problem. And so we have this tournament culture and this game focused culture instead of, practicing and playing and just get better and finding times to rest and actually having an off season and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, Joanne, that was funny. Joanna Lowen said that she'd never missed a family holiday travel event or dinner. She never had to make that decision to go away from family. And that's what we've done here. In fact, in the soccer community, as like several others, you take the kids away from some of the most valuable experiences in their life, like high school.
Yeah.
The fact that we don't let our high school kids play soccer for their own high school. Right. Same thing with hockey, same thing with gymnastics. I mean, it's a shame that you don't let them have those amazing experiences. And let's bring this then to your first book, Changing the Game, and wanting to give the sport back to the kids. I'm struck by a concept recently, and it's FOMO. And you mentioned it earlier. Good intentioned parents who are supportive, parents who even promote the idea of playing multiple sport. Are we finding ourselves now in a society, if we come to the point in this evolution of the business of youth sports, where parents who want to do good can't because they're fearing that they're going to miss out? If Sally next door is going to academy, then you want your kid to go to academy too. Is this a rising tide problem that we have?
I completely. And so I think parents have great intentions. They love their kids, but, Sally's doing it, so then Jenny's got to do it, right? Instead of saying, Sally likes other stuff than Jenny, or, I noticed that Sally stays after practice every day for an hour and Jenny can't wait to get home because she wants to play piano, right? Or she wants to do something else, right? So Jenny's not Sally, but yet if she does that, my kid might fall behind. So we better do that too. And what I see is that not that a lot of teams like don't have a player who should take that next jump. I mean, we do have to promote and help kids who are ready to outgrow whatever we can offer them. Like, you've outgrown this, here's the next step. But the problem isn't that one kid left, it's then 2, 3, 4, and 5 follow them out the door because they left, so we better leave. And then all of a sudden our team's gone, and those kids start driving a long way for a lesser experience, and then 2 years later they come back or they quit. And I mean, it's just this like never ending cycle of silliness.
Good word. It is. It's unfortunate. It's silly. And boy, kudos to you for being one of the early gurus, as I'll call it, of change and in youth sports. Obviously focused at first with your soccer experience, and then came Changing the Game. Fabulous book, which really wants to give the game back to the kids. We've had Linda Flanagan on the show, and she wrote a fabulous book advocating the same. She actually came with a little bit more data than you had at the time. You had some great data at the time, including one of the statistics that continues to just blow my mind today, and that's the drop-off rate. And I think that's extended. And in fact, let me ask you that as an interim question here. We have this statistic. What is it? 75% drop-off by the age of 13. And one of the top reasons given is it's not fun anymore. But I'm hearing now even an equally alarming statistic, and that is that women athletes don't want to continue playing at the collegiate level. They're done with the pressure. They're done with the mental illness issues. They're done with the overcoaching, and now we're seeing, unfortunately, the sexual abuse and other misconduct that's surfacing. So are we seeing a true rise in that, or are these just talking points?
Oh, no, I think the statistics are pretty much bear it out. The rise in, a lack of mental wellness, let's call it, whether it's depression, suicide, things like that. I think a lot of kids, yes, have felt a ton of pressure in sport and are just done and burnt out. A lot of kids get to college, decide to play, and get there and realize they don't love it anymore, that they have nothing left in the tank to give. And oh, by the way, college sports is really hard, right? It's really hard. It's a hard thing to do. So, I mean, there's so much to this that it's not just a female thing, it's a male thing. But so many of these kids, they've lost the joy, and sometimes I tend to use the word joy more than fun because people associate fun with happy clappy fooling around or whatever. But joy, like adults understand joy. I always tell the story. I ran one marathon in my life. It was actually the Chicago Marathon, and mile 20 to 26, there is no pleasure, right? There's nothing fun, but you can still enjoy running. Right. And so joy is from pursuit of getting better, and joy has challenges and it's demanding, and all these things bring joy to children. Positive team dynamics, massive part of joy. Great coaching, massive part of joy. Right. And yet we've created an environment where a lot of times the coaching isn't great. It's very transactional. Coaches aren't taught and don't focus on the team dynamics. And so that becomes miserable. And then kids are just like, yeah, you know what? I have a lot of other choices these days. I have all the entertainment that I want in my pocket. So this sport thing better be good to make me put my phone away or put the video game console away. And if it's not good, then I'm going to go do something else.
Wow, compelling. And the evolution then of John O'Sullivan continues to Every Moment Matters. So Changing the Game, we'll say more focused on the parent and raising happy kids, covering a lot of these concepts that we've been discussing today. And then we get into the coaching. So great segue there. talking about coaches train, talking about the pressures on coaching. Linda Flanagan goes deep into the money aspect, and I talk about that in terms of the cliche of the Facebook page, right? If your local coach is not doing a good enough job, some soccer mom, in air quotes, is going to start a Facebook page campaign to try and get them fired. And it's horrendous. But every moment matters goes deeper into the coaching. How can you be the better coach that has to contend with all those issues? But most importantly, coaches great kids, empowers great kids, gives them tools to be great kids as well as great players, and bringing that even more forward. Let's get into the book. The new book is The Champion Teammate, and now we're talking about what does it mean to be a great teammate. So we've covered parents, we've covered coaches, and now we're going to teammate. But I'd say that the common focus to me in reading these fabulous books is the culture. Mm-hmm. And we talk about at Mettle Sports that soccer's not a sport, it's a culture. And I think that is the thing that we've been generally covering here today and not fully understanding. And that is, I think, by far the vast, the biggest piece of the comparison between us and the rest of the world who understands it. You go to an Arsenal game and they're playing a match against Man United and 68,000 chanting people in the stands. Every one of them plays.
Mm-hmm. Or at least think they do.
Well, they get out there and they kick a ball around.
Yeah.
We can't say that for any sporting event in the States, at least not that I've seen. And by the way, as an aside, and your earlier reference, John and I are both obsessive hockey players as well. And we play pickup. We play 2-3 times a week pickup. But I am struck by your time and space comparison and how many times I, as a hockey player but a soccer coach, try and get soccer coaches to watch more hockey.
Yeah.
Because hockey evolved in the 70s and 80s after we saw what the Russians can do. Mm-hmm. The Russians and the Russian circles was all about time and space and shooting lanes. And we struggle with that in developing great tactical and technical skills for our soccer players. I'm thinking, well, you should watch more of this. But of course, most soccer coaches would never, ever sit down and watch a hockey game.
Yeah.
So let's get to Champion Teammate. How did you get here? And then tell us about the book.
So if you think about athlete development, I always say it's a three-legged stool. You have the athlete, you have the coaches, and you have the parent. And if you take away a leg, the stool will collapse. And so, my first book was written, primarily for parents, but also for coaches. And let's face it, most coaches are also parents. On how they could create the right environment and mindset for kids to perform their best, but also have great joy. And then, like you said, Every Moment Matters was really focused on coaches and what we had learned from the first 150 podcast episodes, interviewing some of the world's best coaches and what went into great coaching. And then, and so Jerry and I wrote this last one, The Champion Teammate, together. Just, it was sort of twofold. Number one, it's the third leg of the stool. And we're going to, we're part of teams our whole entire life, right? Whether it's our family is a team, our work is a team, our church, our community, our school, our sports teams, like we're part of teams our whole life. And we tell people be a great teammate, but we don't actually teach them how to do that. But we know that if you're a great teammate, if you make the people around you better, whether it's on a sports field or on a sales team, you will always be in demand, right? And human beings are human beings. So the same qualities and same things that we want on our sports teams translate to the rest of life as well. And so Jerry and I sort of, wrote this book. And then sort of the second part is I do some team development work with some college teams and some high school teams. And so does Jerry, and Jerry's been doing it forever. And we said, people are always like, oh, what's a good book for us to read together as a team? And we're like, well, we should do one because we have a lot of stories. So this book shares stories of our own experiences working with, top collegiate teams, to ancient wisdom, to Native American tradition, and to stories of some legendary athletes that people would know, and, their influence, good or bad, as a teammate. And I think again, since since we all end up in the pickup league or the bar league eventually, right? Like sport can have this greater mission. And if you're a great teammate who people want to be around, and then you have the skill and the physicality and all these other things, I mean, people are like, yes, fantastic, right? But if you're a pretty good player and you're a cancer on your team and you want to play at the next level and there's someone just as good as you, who are they going to pick? Right. And so we figured, hey, like, here's a great book about how you can be a little better teammate.
Well, I got to say, when you announced the book, it was forthcoming, and then you sent me an advance copy. I almost wish that I didn't know it was coming from you and didn't know the title, because when you read just the table of contents alone, you're immediately feeling empowered. Like, there's something good that's going to come from this and has nothing to do with sports. Be an elevator, set standards, not rules, master your influence, win the day, don't react, respond, learn to surf, choose joy. I mean, lesson after lesson after lesson that you and Jerry bring from your just wildly vast experience into, as you say, a life toolbox, and not just the toolbox for being on a particular team. But I did, because I wouldn't be me if I didn't. I did have a question. So, the focus early on was, we got to give the game back to the kids. We got to give the game back to the kids. We got to give the game back to the kids. We got to let them play more. We got to let them develop more. We got to let them learn more and choose more. And of course, I'm huge cheerleader. It's what we do at Mettle Sports as well. And then I'm thinking, well, okay, what's this new thing John's got going on here? We got this book, which is really about teams, and a lot of it is about higher level teams, not elite teams, but higher level teams, or at least older teams, higher aged kids, high school, college. I'm like, where is this going? So then I asked the question, fine, tell me, John, tell me how this helps give the game back to the kids.
Sure. Well, first of all, this whole book is about kids, teams, athletes taking ownership of their team, right? So that's the first way that the game belongs to someone, right? We go back to the most simple ingredients for developing in a sport or ownership and enjoyment and intrinsic motivation. So this whole book is basically, let's look at concepts that will make us a better team. And then as a team, discuss what are the things that we need to start doing that we're not doing right now to connect better. What are the things that we need to stop doing that we are doing that are ruining this connection? What are the things that we're doing well that we need to keep doing? And so every chapter is the whole idea is that eventually the team's like, we got it. Right? That the coach is not at the center of this anymore, that the coach provides the impetus and is the torchbearer of, hey, we're going down this path, but you as a team have to define who you are. What are the standards? What are the values? Where do we want to go? Right. And so, yeah, this isn't a book for 6-year-olds, but a huge part of the athlete base and the coaches that I work with are high school coaches and college coaches and professional coaches, and they're always looking for this. How do we, and if you think about it, right, go to your local high school and figure out who are the last 4 or 5 coaches who got fired, right? And then ask, were they fired because they didn't know enough about football or lacrosse or hockey? No, it's because they can't build teams. They can't communicate. They can't inspire. And so this is sort of a roadmap. So, as a coach, hey, we're going to read this book together, or every week we're going to do a chapter and we're going to have a little discussion, and it takes 10, 15 minutes. It's really quick, but we're going to, up the focus and up the commitment levels and up the intensity levels. And if we do that, we're going to be better at practice. And if we're better at practice, we're going to be better at games. And so that's the point of this book.
Well, I love that word, focus. Another early guest, Skip Gilbert, we were chatting about one of the development camps, ODP camps, and how I watched a woman who's very highly ranked coach in the system conduct a session of 14 and 15-year-olds, and how, by sharp comparison to the example we used earlier with Todd Bean, was talking constantly. And that's a great word. I didn't ask it at the time, but that would have been the question I would have asked even internally is, what is your focus? What are you focusing on here? What's your objective? What are you attempting to do for your players, if you're even attempting to do something for your players, or is it doing something for yourself? So I can't emphasize enough how cool it is, how groovy it is that these various chapters in your book, which are broken up into connect, compete, and lead, are very empowering and self-help oriented, not only for a coach, but for a player as well. And you could see how that will transfer ownership. So I guess there's the answer to my question, and that this is how we give the game back to the kids at any level. It's not just how do we give it back to them at 5 years old when it starts, but how do we give it back to them now in present time, no matter where you are.
Yeah, I think that's it always, right? Like how do we give it back to kids, to anyone, right? And it's always about letting them own it, right? Letting them have a say, because when people get to weigh in, then they buy in. And this book teaches you, how to deal with difficult teammates, because there are difficult teammates, right? How do you bring them on board? How do you try to shift behavior? I mean, here's the biggest thing. I think when we're coaching at younger levels, when our kids are playing, really what we're trying to do is teach behaviors. We're trying to develop habits and behaviors that, if repeated over time, will lead to good outcomes. And so we have to focus on behaviors, because if we get the behaviors right, people do good things, right? I think a lot of youth coaches are so focused on technique that they don't focus on behaviors. But give me an hour of fully focused, fully engaged, 100% effort kids over 90 minutes of, oh yeah, we're just kind of going through the motions today. It's hot, it's cold, it's this, it's that. Like, no. And so I have to create an environment where I do this. Like I said to you, I work with 8 and 9-year-olds. I hadn't coached that age in 10 years since my kids were there. And I was kind of shocked when I took over this program last year at sort of the behavior or just the lack of discipline, the ability to listen, the ability, and I said to the parents, I'm like, I'm going to teach your kids to do this, because these are important life skills, like the ability just to be able to treat your teammate respectfully. And you can't say that to people, and you have to do this. And so, we did this program with that group. We did like soccer bingo in the month of April, and it was great because I made a bingo board of 25 different things, and some of them were like, juggle 4 times a week, right? And some of the boxes were learn a new skill or whatever, but others were make your bed, no screens for a day, do the laundry, take out the trash without being asked. And all the parents like, this is amazing. Can we do this every month? Like my kid is just like engaged because they want to win these prizes at the end. But by the same token, it's like they're just totally, engaged in human development, and we're just doing it through soccer. So this book is a human development book, and it just happens to be, well, if you're part of a sports team, you might as well learn now, because a lot of us have that experience early on.
Maybe in the next printing of this book, you can have an afterword about folding laundry techniques. So no, definitely not if you've seen my closet. So, John, how do we measure outcomes? How does what you're doing get measured? How does what we're doing get measured? How does this attempt at shifting the paradigm somewhat in the United States, how do we measure that? What's going to be the barometer for us?
Well, I think everyone has to have their own individual definition of success, right? How do you define success if you're coaching a team this season, or, for you building a street soccer complex or trying to grow that, or whatever you're doing, right? You have to have a definition of success. And I don't think it's that we develop one pro player. It's, hey, that we get thousands of kids, tens of thousands of people playing this beautiful game, right? And so, yeah, I used to think as a young coach that, a kid who made it would make it because of everything I did for them. And what I realized as an older coach is that the people who make it are usually so intrinsically motivated, and most coaches just get in the way, right? But if you can take that step back, become a facilitator, stoke the fire from minute to minute, impart knowledge, and then let them pass through your orbit a better player, but and more importantly, a better human being, then that's your job, right? And so for me, success is that people play soccer for the rest of their life. And some of my favorite kids, I mean, I have kids because I coach them, they're my daughter's age, right? Going to Pac-12 schools to swim and run track and play baseball and things like that. And it's like, you know what? Like, and I remember the day when they said, I don't think I'm going to play soccer anymore, but this is the hardest decision I've ever had to make because I love soccer, right? Versus like the coach, like, you got to pick one, forget that other thing. Like, no, like find your path. And if that's your path, then awesome. But my job was to make this decision super hard for you, right? And the fact that you still love it, and I know you're going to go play in some adult league somewhere, and maybe you'll coach your own kids someday, then that's fantastic. Like it's great.
So I had another question tooled up, but I'm not going to ask it because I don't know that we can end any better than we just did. That's just so superbly well put, and I hope that the movement continues and that you continue this amazing work you're doing, and Jerry and the others that have signed on to this need for not necessarily advocating a 180 on this ship, but at least writing it somewhat so that we can provide greater access, provide greater opportunities, provide greater developmental opportunities, provide an opportunity for kids to be great kids and to have fun.
Yeah.
So, John, really can't thank you enough for being on the show. We will put links to, obviously, all the books in the podcast when we post, and the new one is The Champion Teammate. It's really full of life lessons, no matter where you find yourself in your journey, whether it's sport or business or otherwise. So I can't recommend it enough. A great read. So congratulations on the release of that. Is it out now?
It is out now. Yep. It's out as of a couple days ago. So
outstanding.
Doing really well. We're excited about it.
Great. Then the link will be there as well. John, look forward to talking to you again very soon. As always, definitely one of the good ones in terms of the focus that you have, using that word, and love the work and love to be associated with people like you who are doing that good. So thanks again.
Well, thank you guys for the great work you're doing. And as we stare at this, and I'm envious of the picture in your background, and also picturing what the next iteration of that's going to look like is pretty cool. So keep up your great work as well.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
All right, that's a wrap. John O'Sullivan, another fabulous guy doing amazing work. His own personal journey is incredible, but so too is the work he's doing with Changing the Game project. We'll put links to the book, Changing the Game, Every Moment Matters, and The Champion Teammate down below. Hey, thanks for the likes and the follows. We really appreciate you. Let's keep the conversation going, and together we can change the game. Play on.